The late afternoon sun slid slowly across the sky above Dixon, Kentucky, turning the quiet little town into a painting of molten gold and fading orange. The houses sat still, like they were holding their breath, and the shadows stretched long across the roads that had seen every version of the Slayton sisters: broken, stubborn, hopeful, hurting, rising, falling, and always getting back up again. Inside Amy Slayton's home, the air felt strange, too quiet for a house that usually echoed with the sound of children, laughter, or the steady rhythm of everyday life. Instead, there was a softness to the silence, a heaviness that didn't belong. It was the kind of silence that only arrived after weeks of tension, the tension that seeped into the walls and made the house feel like it was leaning in to listen. Amy herself stood near the kitchen counter, rubbing her palms together in small circles, without realizing it. She had done so much to rebuild herself. She had survived heartbreak, the difficult separation from Michael, the endless nights of crying while trying to stay strong for her boys. She had moved forward. She had remarried. She had tried, really tried, to build a peaceful, stable little world for her family. But sometimes life had a cruel way of unraveling everything just when you thought you finally had a grip. Josh had become distant, like someone slowly fading out of a photograph. His eyes stopped meeting hers. His phone became a permanent extension of his hand, always hidden, always turned away from her. He came home late more often, smelling like a mix of cheap cologne and excuses. At first, she ignored it because ignoring pain often felt easier than facing it. But ignoring didn't erase the truth. It only postponed the sting. Amy's mind replayed the last few weeks like a broken documentary. Josh shrugging when she asked simple questions. Josh leaving early. Josh smiling at his phone but never at her. Each moment had been small, almost invisible on its own, but together they created an ache inside her chest too heavy to carry alone. That Friday evening, she finally confronted him. Her voice trembled before her words even formed. "Where were you, Josh? You said 6 o'clock. His sigh came out sharp, annoyed. "Work, Amy. I already told you." But she knew. Deep inside, she knew the truth was hiding behind his tone. Later that night, the truth found her on its own. Josh's phone buzzed on the counter while he showered. Normally, she would never touch it. She hated the idea of snooping. But something in her chest, fear, instinct, heartbreak, pushed her forward. She picked up the phone. One swipe, and her entire world collapsed. Messages, pictures, conversations. A woman she had never seen sending heart emojis, videos, late-night texts. But worse than that, far worse, another message thread opened. Michael, her ex-husband, the man she had cried over, fought through, survived. And there they were, Josh and Michael, talking behind her back. Meeting behind her back. Laughing at things she didn't know. Planning things she wasn't part of. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears until she couldn't hear anything else. The room blurred. Her knees gave out, and she sank onto the living room floor like a child unable to stand after being pushed too hard. She cried without sound at first. Then the kind of crying that shakes the ribs and tears at the throat. Why would they both do this to me?" she whispered into her hands. That's how Tammy found her, collapsed, broken, trembling. Tammy wheeled into the room with her usual loud presence, ready to tease Amy or demand a snack. But the moment she saw her sister curled on the floor, the teasing vanished. "Amy? What the hell happened?" Amy looked up, face soaked with tears she couldn't wipe fast enough. Her voice was cracked, barely words. "They both. Josh. Michael, they..." Tammy grabbed the phone. She didn't blink once while reading. Her eyes went narrow, sharp, burning with fury so intense it filled the room like smoke. "No," she growled. "No one hurts my sister. No one." Before Amy could speak, Tammy snatched her own phone. Her hands shook, not from fear, from rage. She dialed 911. The sirens came faster than the night fell. Blue and red lights washed over the house, dancing across the porch, the windows, the floor. It felt unreal, like a scene from someone else's life. Then Michael showed up. Loud. Shouting. Defensive. Trying to force explanations that made no sense, his voice booming across the yard. When he threw a chair onto the porch, that was it. The officers grabbed him. Metal clicked. "You are under arrest, Michael Slayton." Amy clutched Tammy's hand so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her whole body shook. Josh tried to slink away, stuttering excuses, claiming he didn't know Michael would come. The officers stopped him too. Tammy pointed straight at him, fire in her eyes. "You can't hurt her and walk away." "Not anymore." Statements were taken. Voices calmed. The chaos ended the way storms always end, suddenly, leaving behind a quiet that felt too large. When the police car pulled away with Michael inside, everything felt unreal. Amy sank onto the couch, trembling. Tammy returned from the kitchen holding 2 cups of hot tea. "You're not alone, sis," Tammy whispered, sitting beside her. "If someone hurts you, I'll fight them every time. We're sisters." Amy leaned against her, exhausted beyond words. Over the next few days, the entire town whispered about the incident, because small towns always whisper. But Amy ignored it. She blocked Josh. She focused on her sons, on breathing, on surviving. And Tammy, loud, chaotic, protective Tammy, stayed with her the entire week. Cleaning, cooking, laughing, guarding. For the first time in a long time, Amy felt held. And when the episode of their lives closed on that final evening, they sat on the porch with sweet tea and quiet hearts, letting the night breeze wrap around them like a promise that better days would come. But somewhere in Dixon, another story was unfolding. Another Slayton sister was waking up, and her world was about to shift too. The quiet that followed felt heavier than the arguments that had filled the house just hours before. Every breath carried the weight of old wounds, the kind that hide beneath family jokes and reality TV confessions, but never truly disappear. Tammy sat silently, her fingers tapping against the side of her wheelchair, the rhythmic motion echoing her unease. She wasn't angry, at least not in the way people always assumed. What she felt was harder to name. A slow-burning ache, a fear of slipping backward, a worry she would fail everyone who kept believing in her. Across the room, Amy watched her sister with an expression that blended worry and determination. She wanted to help, but she also didn't want to push too hard. Tammy had come too far, fought too many impossible battles, and the scars were still fresh. Some victories were loud. Surgery milestones, rehab updates, cheers from fans online. But others were quiet, happening in dark rooms late at night when no cameras were around, when Tammy fought the voice that told her she wasn't strong enough. Amy knew those battles existed because she had fought her own versions of them too. The house felt suspended between past and future as they both tried to understand what the next chapter might bring. Season after season, their lives had unfolded for millions to see, but the cameras never captured everything. They didn't show the moments when Amy paced the hallway at midnight, trying to figure out how to say something without triggering another spiral. They didn't show Tammy holding her phone, but not calling anyone because she didn't want to be a burden. They didn't show the fights that started over nothing but were really about everything: fear, frustration, hope, exhaustion. A soft thud sounded as Michael set a cup of tea on the table, breaking the tension just enough for Amy to blink back to reality. He wasn't the talkative type, but he always stepped in at the right times, grounding the chaos with quiet gestures. Gage toddled across the floor, his small hands reaching for toys, unaware of the storm of emotions surrounding him. In the chaos of adulthood, children had a way of reminding everyone what innocence felt like. Tammy watched the little boy and felt a warmth spread through her chest. She loved being Aunt Tammy. She loved the way the kids looked at her without judgment, without the weight of her past. To them, she wasn't the woman fighting for her life or the star of a show splashed across tabloids. She was simply family. Someone safe. Someone who made them laugh with silly faces and dramatic stories. And in those moments, she felt something she didn't always admit. She wanted to live not just for herself, but for them. Amy moved closer, pulling a blanket around her shoulders, her voice low as she finally spoke. "We can figure this out," she said, more gently than before. But we gotta stop acting like we're on different teams. Tammy's jaw tightened, not from anger, but from emotion. She stared at the window, watching the light fall across the street. I know, she whispered. I get scared. The confession hung in the air, fragile and honest. Amy reached out, resting her hand on her sister's arm. Me too, she said. All the time. But we don't quit. Not now. Not after everything. For a long stretch of silence, neither of them spoke. But something shifted, like a rope pulled too tight finally loosening. Whatever came next, it would be hard. It always was. But they weren't standing in different corners anymore. They were facing the same direction again, even if the path ahead was rough. Outside, a car door slammed, and Chris's familiar footsteps approached the house. His arrival always carried a certain energy, half tough love, half comic relief. He stepped inside with a bag of groceries and a look that blended concern with brotherly annoyance. Well, he said, eyeing them both, y'all look like you're either about to hug or fight. Which one am I breaking up today? Amy laughed, the sound cracking through the tension like sunlight through clouds. Tammy rolled her eyes, but couldn't stop the small smile tugging at her lips. The moment wasn't fixed, but it was healing. And sometimes healing didn't begin with big speeches. Sometimes it began with a joke and the people who knew you better than anyone. Chris set the groceries down and crossed his arms. All right, who's gonna tell me what happened? And don't say nothing. Because every time y'all say that, it takes me 2 hours to clean up the emotional fire you started. The room warmed with chuckles, quiet but real. No, everything wasn't perfect. Far from it. But something about being together, even in their messiest moments, made all of them feel stronger. And as the evening deepened around them, the future didn't feel so unbearable anymore. It felt possible. The next morning came quietly, the soft hum of early sunlight spilling across the living room where the Slayton siblings had ended up talking far later than they'd planned. Empty cups, crumpled napkins, and an untouched bag of chips sat scattered across the table, a small reminder of a night filled with honesty, old jokes, and the complicated love only family understands. Tammy woke earlier than usual, her mind still replaying pieces of last night's conversation. Nothing had been completely solved, but something had shifted, and she felt it like a subtle warmth lodged behind her ribs. She rolled toward the window, watching the soft pink sky brighten. For years, mornings had felt heavy. Another day to survive, another reminder of how far she still had to go. But lately, despite the ups and downs, she was beginning to see mornings differently. They weren't punishments. They were chances. And today felt like one of those rare days where hope didn't feel like a lie. In the kitchen, she could hear the low rumble of Chris's voice. He always woke up like he was already halfway through a conversation, the kind of man who talked with a purpose even when he didn't have one. Amy's laughter followed, light and familiar, mixing with the sizzle of something cooking on the stove. Tammy listened another moment before maneuvering herself toward the doorway. The wheels squeaked slightly, but no one commented. They were used to the sound, it was just part of the rhythm of life now. When she rolled into the kitchen, Chris was already pouring coffee, one foot tapping impatiently as he scrolled through his phone. He glanced up when he saw her, softening in the way he only ever did with his sisters. There she is, he said, sliding a mug toward Amy. Thought you were gonna sleep till noon. Tammy shrugged, biting back a smile. Thought I'd prove you wrong for once. Amy nudged a plate toward her sister. We didn't start without you. Figured you'd want to eat with us. There were times in the past when Tammy might have taken the gesture the wrong way, thought they were monitoring her, judging her, keeping too close an eye on what she ate. But this morning, it felt exactly as they intended, an invitation, not surveillance. She reached for her fork, grateful in her own quiet way. Chris cleared his throat, the way he always did when he was about to launch into something serious. Okay, before y'all yell at me, let me just say, I'm bringing something up because I care. Amy groaned. Oh Lord, here we go. Tammy narrowed her eyes. If this is about my appointments, it ain't, he said, holding up his hands defensively. Not exactly. But we gotta talk about the upcoming season. The room stilled just a little. Everyone knew what he meant. The new season, season 8, was coming up fast, and the pressure was already rising. Fans were speculating. Producers were calling. Online rumors were spreading. And through it all, the siblings were trying to figure out how to keep their personal lives from being swallowed whole. Amy exhaled slowly. What about it? Chris set his phone down, leaning on the counter. They want more drama. They're pushing for it. Feuds, arguments, all that nonsense. And I'm just saying, we gotta be careful. Tammy stiffened. Careful how? Careful about what we give them, he answered. We can't let them twist our problems into something bigger than they are. We're already fightin' enough. Amy nodded, her eyes darkening with memory. They'd all had moments where scenes were taken out of context, small arguments were magnified, or private pain was turned into plot points. Fame had given them opportunity, but it had taken pieces of them too. Tammy swallowed hard. I don't want another season like before, where every mistake I make becomes a headline. Chris's expression gentled. That's what I'm saying. We protect each other.
Stick together this time.
No more letting producers stir the pot. Amy glanced at her sister, voice softening. And no more letting people pit us against each other.
Not this season.
Tammy nodded slowly, the weight of her siblings' support sinking in deep. She'd had years of being painted as the villain, the unstable one, the ticking time bomb. But now, with her health improving and her mindset steadier, she wanted to rewrite her own narrative. Not just for the cameras, but for herself. The room fell into a thoughtful quiet until Gage came stumbling in, blanket dragging behind him and hair sticking out in every direction. He climbed onto Amy's lap with a sleepy grunt, instantly melting the tension in the room. Kids had that magic, turning storms into softness without even trying. Chris chuckled.
See?
This right here is real life, not the drama they beg us for. Tammy reached over, gently touching Gage's hand. The little boy grinned sleepily at her, and warmth spread through her chest again. This family, small moments, rebuilding trust, this was what she wanted her life to be about. Not arguments edited for television. Not tears replayed on social media. Real life. Real healing. Real connection. But even as peace settled around them, Tammy caught the flicker of conflict in Amy's eyes. Something unspoken. Something building. And she knew Amy felt it too. No matter how united they were now, the pressures of the new season would test them again. The question wasn't whether conflict would come. The question was whether they were finally strong enough to handle it together. As the day stretched into the early afternoon, the house settled into its usual rhythm, light conversation, scattered chores, the comforting hum of ordinary life. For a family that had lived so much of their existence in the glare of the public eye, moments like these felt almost sacred. They were reminders of who they were before the cameras, before the pressure, before every gesture and decision became content. Tammy rolled to the porch, craving a bit of air. The breeze carried the faint smell of distant barbecue smoke and fresh-cut grass, the kind of scent that made her feel grounded. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply, soaking in the quiet. So much had changed over the past year. Her health, her appearance, her confidence. But she often found herself wondering whether people understood how much of that journey had been internal. The surgeries and weight loss were visible. The emotional battles were not. Behind her, the screen door creaked, and Amy stepped outside with 2 glasses of water, setting one gently beside Tammy. You okay? Amy asked, leaning against the porch railing. Tammy nodded but didn't speak right away. She watched a car drive down the street, then disappear around the corner. Just thinkin', she finally said. That's dangerous. Amy teased lightly, her smile warm. Tammy huffed a small laugh. I mean it. About what Chris said earlier. About the season. Amy's eyes softened. I figured. It's a lot to take in. A long moment passed before Tammy continued. Do you ever feel like, no matter how much we change, people still want us to be the same? Like they're waiting for us to mess up again so they can say, see? They ain't really different. Amy exhaled slowly. Yeah, I feel that. All the time. Tammy turned her head slightly. So what do? We prove 'em wrong. Amy replied. Not for them. For us. The conviction in her voice struck Tammy in a way she wasn't expecting. For so long, Amy had been the peacemaker, the fixer, the one who tried to smooth over every storm. But now, Amy spoke with a quiet strength, not aggressive, not loud, just firm. Like someone who had finally learned the difference between carrying her sister and standing beside her. Tammy looked down at her hands. I just don't want to go backward. You're not, Amy said, stepping closer. You're scared. But scared don't mean stuck. The words lingered in the warm air, sinking deeper than Tammy let on. Progress wasn't always a straight line. She knew that. She lived it. Some days she woke up feeling strong and determined. Other days she felt fragile, like she was walking across a glass floor and waiting for it to crack. But she kept going anyway. And maybe that was the real victory. Before Tammy could respond, the sound of boots on wood signaled another arrival. Chris walked out with a grocery list in hand and a look of exaggerated exhaustion. I need y'all's opinion, he said, holding up the paper dramatically. Do I buy the store-brand detergent or the fancy one? 'Cause if I come home with the wrong one, somebody's gonna yell at me. Amy rolled her eyes. Get the one that don't make the clothes smell like chemicals. That ain't helpful. Chris snapped playfully. Tammy smirked. Get both. Solve the problem. Chris stared at her. You know what? That's actually not a bad idea. Amy laughed. Only you would buy 2 detergents instead of picking one. I'm a problem solver, he said proudly. It's what I do. The siblings fell into easy conversation, the kind that softened worry and distracted from the heavier things looming ahead. For all their fights and frustrations, the truth was simple. They were better together. Always had been. After Chris left for the store, Amy and Tammy lingered on the porch. Birds chirped from the nearby tree, and the distant rumble of a lawnmower filled the quiet. You remember when we used to sit out here and dream about moving out, getting our own places? Amy asked. Tammy nodded. We thought being adults meant eating ice cream whenever we wanted. And staying up all night, Amy added. And nobody telling us what to do, Tammy said with a laugh. Silence followed as they both realized how far from those dreams their real lives had been. Adulthood had brought responsibilities, heartbreaks, public scrutiny, and a level of pressure they couldn't have imagined. But it had also brought growth, messy, painful, necessary growth. You think we'll ever get a season where everything goes right? Amy asked quietly. Tammy's answer came without hesitation. Maybe not. But we can have a season where we don't fall apart. Amy considered that. I could live with that. For a moment, neither of them moved. The sky brightened as the sun climbed higher, warming their faces. Tammy felt the weight of fear still lingering, but it no longer felt like it controlled her. Not with Amy here. Not with Chris checking in every 5 minutes. Not with the progress she fought so hard for. Whatever season 8 brought, tension, reconciliation, unexpected twists, or new challenges, it wouldn't break her the way past seasons had. Because this time, she wasn't going into it alone or fragile or uncertain of her worth. She was stronger now. And for the first time in a long time, she believed it. The day moved slower as the afternoon sun cast long, gold streaks across the driveway. Inside, the house buzzed with its usual blend of small chaos and warmth, Gage chasing a toy truck around the living room, Amy picking up scattered crayons, and Tammy scrolling through her phone, half distracted, half absorbing the world outside their home. Every few minutes, another notification popped up. Fan pages, rumor accounts, reaction channels, people debating the upcoming season before a single episode even aired. Tammy's name appeared again and again, each post tugging at her emotions in ways she wished she could control. Some comments were supportive, people cheering her progress, proud of how far she'd come. Others weren't so kind. Old criticisms resurfaced. Clips from past seasons circulated like ghosts she couldn't escape. She tried to ignore them, but her thumb hovered above the screen a moment too long, her breath tightening. Amy noticed from across the room. She knew that look. She'd seen it hundreds of times. Don't let it get in your head, she said gently. Tammy locked her phone and set it aside. I'm not, she replied, but her voice betrayed her. Amy sat beside her, not saying anything for a minute. Sometimes presence mattered more than advice. They don't know you now, she finally whispered. They only know who you were. Tammy exhaled shakily. Feels like I'll never get to live down the past. You will, Amy said. Maybe not with everyone. But with yourself? Yeah, you will. The quiet between them deepened. Not awkward, not heavy, just honest. They had spent their entire lives trying to outrun labels. Troublemaker, burden, failure, disappointment. And now, for the first time, Tammy felt close to breaking free of them. But freedom came with a cost, vulnerability, exposure, the fear of backsliding. A knock at the door startled them both. Amy stood and peeked through the curtain. It's Misty, she said, her eyebrows raising in surprise. Tammy stiffened slightly. Misty had always been the more cautious, more skeptical sibling, the one who asked hard questions and never sugarcoated her opinions. She loved Tammy deeply, but her way of expressing it often came across as harsh. And now, with the season about to film, Misty's arrival probably meant one thing: another conversation Tammy wasn't sure she was ready for. Amy opened the door, and Misty stepped inside with a tote bag on her shoulder and determination in her expression. She walked straight over to Tammy and pulled her into a careful hug. You look good, Misty said, stepping back. Her tone held genuine warmth, softening the anxiety in Tammy's chest. Thanks, Tammy replied quietly. Misty glanced around the room. We need to talk. Amy groaned. Can we ever just have a normal visit? No, Misty said simply. Y'all know that's not how I work. Tammy braced herself. All right, what's going on? Misty set her bag down and folded her arms. I talked to production this morning. They want to push this sisters splitting apart storyline. And I'm telling you right now, they're going to dig at anything they can find. Amy rolled her eyes. Of course they are. Tammy's heart rate quickened. And what did you say? I told them I wasn't going to be part of tearing this family apart, Misty said firmly. But you know how they are. They're going to try anyway. So we need to be prepared. Tammy swallowed. Prepared how? Misty sat on the edge of the couch. By being united. By not tucking the bait. By set-in boundaries. If we go into this season emotional and unsteady, they'll twist everything. Amy nodded slowly. She's right. Tammy looked down at her hands. I'm tired of being the storyline. Misty softened, placing a hand over hers. You're not the storyline. You're a person. And you're allowed to protect yourself. Those words landed heavy, but comforting. For so long, Tammy had felt like she existed between two identities. The real woman trying to better herself, and the version of her shown on TV, edited, sensationalized, scrutinized. She didn't hate the show. It had brought her opportunities, accountability, even life-saving interventions. But it had also shaped the public's perception of her in ways she didn't always recognize herself. Amy sat beside them. We stick together this time. No matter what. Tammy didn't speak yet, but something inside her shifted. A resolve she didn't know she still had. A sense of control she thought she'd lost years ago. Misty continued, her voice steady. You've come too far to let this season break you. You're stronger now. You know who you are. Don't let anyone take that from you. Gage climbed onto Tammy's lap, holding a stuffed dinosaur. He pressed his cheek against her shoulder, unaware of the weight in the room. Tammy wrapped an arm around him, her eyes softening. I won't, she whispered. Not this time. Amy leaned her head on Tammy's arm. Misty placed her hand on her back. The three sisters sat there in a fragile but powerful moment of unity, a rarity, but a beautiful one. Outside, the sun dipped lower, painting the world in warm, earthy tones. Inside, the Slayton sisters, who had survived fights, surgeries, heartbreaks, and years of public criticism, began to build a quiet pact. Season 8 would test them, but this time, they wouldn't break apart. They would hold each other together. Evenings settled over Dixon like a soft blanket, and the temperature dropped just enough to make the porch feel inviting. Tammy sat outside wrapped in a lightweight throw, the breeze brushing her skin in a way that made her feel grounded, almost peaceful. The earlier conversation with Misty had left her reflective, but not overwhelmed. Something inside her felt steadier, as if the uncertainty that usually shadowed her thoughts had finally begun to clear. Inside, she could hear Amy bustling around the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner. Gage babbled cheerfully to himself in the living room, occasionally squealing at a toy that lit up every time he pressed it. It was domestic noise, familiar and comforting, the sound of stability she didn't take for granted anymore. From the driveway, a car door shut. Tammy glanced over and saw Chris walking up with a small paper bag in one hand and a water bottle in the other. "I brought snacks," he announced as he stepped up onto the porch. Tammy narrowed her eyes. "What kind of snacks?" "Relax," he chuckled. "Healthy. I ain't trying to get jumped by your nurse." Tammy smirked. "Nora would tackle you like a linebacker." Chris sank into the chair beside her, handing her the bag. Inside were crispy apple chips, lightly salted almonds, and a sugar-free lemonade. "These are good," she said, surprised. "You trying to be fancy now?" "Nope," he replied. "Just trying to support my sister without getting yelled at." Tammy laughed softly, taking a sip of the lemonade. Chris leaned back in his chair, looking up at the sky. "You know, I've been thinking a lot." "Oh boy," Tammy teased. "That's dangerous." He didn't laugh immediately, which made her turn toward him with curiosity. "What's up?" Chris hesitated for a moment, a rare sign that whatever he was about to say mattered. "I've been thinking about how far you've come. I know people online still talk mess, but when I see you now, sis, you ain't the same woman from season 1. Not even close." Tammy didn't respond right away. Compliments, especially heartfelt ones, always made her feel strangely vulnerable, like someone was shining a flashlight into places she wasn't used to showing. Chris continued. "When you walked into rehab, I didn't know if you were going to make it. I prayed every night. Mom did too. Even when we didn't say it out loud. We were scared." The memory flickered in Tammy's mind like a dim but persistent flame, machines beeping, her chest burning as if she were suffocating from the inside, nurses calling her name. Her family's terrified faces. A moment that changed everything. "I was scared too," she finally said, her voice almost a whisper. Chris nodded slowly. "But you didn't give up. And now look at you, cooking with your nurse. Logan Moore. Thinkin' clearer. You're different." Tammy swallowed hard. "I'm trying, Chris. And that's all anyone can ask," he said. The porch light flickered on, casting a golden glow over the wooden boards. Bugs hummed in the distance, and the faint smell of grilled food drifted from a neighbor's yard. Tammy relaxed into her chair, letting the quiet settle comfortably between them. After a while, Chris leaned forward. "There's something else, too." Tammy braced herself. Conversations with siblings always came with part 2. "Me and Brittany have been talking," he said. "We want to make a family cookbook." Tammy blinked. What now?" "A cookbook," Chris repeated. "Healthy versions of our favorite Southern meals. Stuff we used to eat growing up, but made better. Something real families can use. And we want you in it." Tammy's eyebrows shot up.
Me? Why?
Chris chuckled. "Because you're actually learning to cook now and people love you. Plus, who better to represent change than you? You ain't perfect. None of us are, but your story is powerful." Tammy looked down at her hands, unsure of what to feel. Flattered, nervous, proud, a mix of everything. "I ain't no chef," she muttered. "You don't need to be," Chris said. "You just need to be you." A small warmth blossomed in Tammy's chest, the kind that makes breathing feel easier. Before she could respond, the front door opened and Nora stepped outside, her sweater wrapped tightly around her. "Evening, Chris," she said with a smile. "Hey, Nurse Norris," he joked. "It's Nora," she corrected with a smirk. Tammy grinned. "He does that on purpose." Nora walked over to Tammy. "I talked to your physical therapist," she said. "They told me you've been making steady progress. I'm proud of you." Tammy blushed, a reaction she rarely had. "Thanks." Chris nudged her shoulder.
See?
Everybody sees it but you. Amy called from inside. Y'all coming in or what? I'm not cleaning this kitchen alone. Chris stood up dramatically. Duty calls. Nora followed him inside, while Tammy lingered a moment longer on the porch, letting the night breeze brush over her skin. She closed her eyes and took a slow breath. Progress. Belonging. Family. Support. She didn't know what the season ahead would bring. Good, bad, messy, emotional, but for the first time in a long time, she felt ready for it. Not because life would be easy, but because she wasn't facing it alone. When she finally rolled inside the house, the laughter, clatter, and noise wrapped around her like a soft embrace. Her family was imperfect, loud, chaotic, but they were hers. And she was theirs. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows, illuminating the counters and casting a golden glow across the room. Tammy sat at the table, her morning coffee steaming gently before her. Nora moved around efficiently, preparing breakfast for both of them. Tammy watched her, impressed at how organized and calm she always seemed. You make it look so easy, Tammy said, a small smile tugging at her lips. Nora glanced up and chuckled softly. It's practice, Tammy. You'll get there too. Tammy stirred her coffee slowly, feeling the warmth seep into her hands. I don't know if I've got the patience for it, she admitted. I've never been normal, I guess. I mean this. She gestured at the kitchen, at the neat counters, the bowls of fresh fruit, the smell of cooked eggs and herbs. This is new to me. Normal isn't the goal, Nora replied gently. Progress is. Small steps. One at a time. Tammy nodded, taking a sip and letting the words sink in. Today felt different. She could feel the calm in her chest, a rare thing after months of turbulence and emotional upheaval. The air was lighter, the noise inside her mind quieter. She realized she hadn't felt this peaceful in years. Just then, her phone buzzed. It was Amy. Tammy picked it up and saw a picture of little Gage laughing in his high chair, frosting smeared all over his tiny hands. Tammy's lips curved into a grin. That boy, she muttered, shaking her head. She quickly dialed back. Hey, Tammy. Look at him. Can you believe it? Amy's voice was bright and full of joy. I can believe it, Tammy said, laughter breaking through her voice. That's a mess he's made. I love it. Amy laughed, and for a moment, the tension of the last few weeks dissolved entirely. The bond they shared, tested over years of ups and downs, seemed stronger in that moment than ever. Listen, Amy said, her tone softening. I don't know how to thank you for being there yesterday. I couldn't have handled it without you. Tammy swallowed. Hey, that's what sisters are for, right? You do the same for me. Amy's sigh was audible even over the phone. I know. But still you're my rock, Tammy. Always have been. And you're really doing it this time. I can see it. Tammy hung up after promising to come by later. She stared at her reflection in the window, the morning sun catching her eyes. The reflection looking back at her was not perfect, but it was real. Scarred, weathered, yet undeniably strong. She felt pride swell inside her. Later that day, Tammy ventured outside for some fresh air. She wheeled herself to the driveway, letting the wind brush against her face. The town of Dixon, Kentucky, stretched out quietly, the streets mostly empty except for the occasional passerby. She felt connected to it in a way she hadn't before, part of a bigger world that she could navigate, a life that could be hers. Chris drove up not long after, his grin wide as always. There she is. Queen of the driveway. Tammy laughed. Funny, and yet accurate. He parked and came around to open the passenger side for her. Want a ride into town? Tammy considered it. Her independence had grown, but some days it felt nice to let someone else take the wheel. Sure, she said, smiling. As they drove, the conversation flowed easily, drifting from memories of childhood to future plans, from lighthearted jokes to genuine, serious discussions about health and life. Tammy felt the familiar weight in her chest ease as she shared her thoughts and fears without judgment, without tension. By the time they returned home, evening was settling in, and the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Tammy wheeled herself to the porch again, where Nora was waiting with a glass of water. "You did good today," Nora said, smiling warmly. "I did," Tammy admitted. She leaned back in her chair, looking out at the fading light. "It feels right. For the first time in forever, it feels right." Nora nodded. "And it's just the beginning, Tammy. You've got so much more ahead." Tammy closed her eyes, letting the soft sounds of the evening, the chirping of birds, the distant laughter of children, the faint hum of traffic, wash over her. She felt lighter than she had in years, freer than she had thought possible. Inside, Amy was tucking Gage into bed, his tiny hands clutching his favorite stuffed shark. She whispered to him about tomorrow, about all the little adventures they would have. Outside, Tammy felt the promise of new beginnings stretch infinitely before her. For the first time, she believed in herself fully, not in what others wanted her to be, but in who she could truly become. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. The next morning dawned quietly over Dixon, Kentucky, the air crisp and tinged with the smell of wet leaves from the previous night's rain. Tammy rolled herself out of bed, stretching her arms slowly, her muscles still sore from the previous day's workout, but in a satisfying way. She had begun to enjoy this sensation, the reminder that she was pushing herself forward, reclaiming her body piece by piece. Nora was already in the kitchen, humming softly while preparing breakfast. Tammy paused for a moment at the doorway, drinking in the sight, fresh fruit neatly arranged, oatmeal cooking gently on the stove, and the sunlight catching the edges of the pots and pans. "You're making this place feel like a real home," Tammy remarked, her voice soft with appreciation. Nora looked over her shoulder, grinning. "A home is what you make it, Tammy. Today we add a little more flavor to yours." Tammy smiled and wheeled herself closer. "Flavor, huh? Just don't expect me to become a gourmet chef overnight." "That's the beauty of it," Nora said lightly. "You don't have to. Just enjoy the process." They worked together in quiet harmony, chopping, stirring, and tasting as they went along. Tammy found herself laughing at her own mistakes, joking when a vegetable slice went stray, or when she nearly dropped a knife. The laughter was liberating, a balm to the tension that had accumulated in her body over the last months of struggle. Later, Chris arrived, bursting in with his usual energy. "Tammy, guess what? Big news," he announced, holding up a letter triumphantly. Tammy raised an eyebrow. "This better not be another parking ticket," she teased. "Nope," he replied with a grin. "It's from your weight loss program. You officially hit a milestone this week. Look at this, 42 pounds down." Tammy's eyes widened. She had known the numbers, felt the changes in her body, but seeing it in black and white, official and undeniable, brought a rush of pride that made her heart swell. I can't believe it," she whispered, her voice catching. "Believe it," Chris said firmly. "You've earned every single pound, every struggle, every early morning and late night. You're a warrior, Tammy." Tammy's gaze softened as she looked at him. "Thanks, Chris. That means a lot." The afternoon passed in a gentle rhythm, broken only by laughter, conversation, and the occasional encouraging word from Nora. Tammy found herself opening up more than she had expected, about her fears, her hopes, the uncertainty of her relationships, and the desire to finally stand on her own. It felt safe to speak these truths here, in this kitchen, surrounded by the warmth of people who truly cared. By evening, Tammy wheeled herself to the porch, letting the cool breeze wash over her. The sky was painted in streaks of purple and orange, the world quiet except for the distant hum of traffic and the occasional bird song. She reflected on the events of the past weeks, the chaos, the fear, the victories, and the setbacks. Each moment had shaped her, challenged her, and ultimately strengthened her resolve. Her phone buzzed. It was Amy. Tammy answered quickly, smiling when she saw the video of little Gage running through the living room, his laughter infectious. "He's unstoppable," Tammy remarked, watching the tiny whirlwind of energy on the screen. Amy laughed. "He's like a little hurricane. Can't keep him still for a second." But that's what makes life fun, right? Absolutely, Tammy agreed. And you're handling it beautifully. I'm proud of you, sis. The phone call ended, and Tammy felt a quiet contentment settle over her. The challenges weren't gone, and life was far from perfect, but in this moment, she felt grounded, capable, and ready to face whatever came next. Look at this, 42 pounds down. Tammy's eyes widened. She had known the numbers, felt the changes in her body, but seeing it in black and white, official and undeniable, brought a rush of pride that made her heart swell.
I
can't believe it, she whispered, her voice catching. Believe it, Chris said firmly. You've earned every single pound, every struggle, every early morning and late night. You're a warrior, Tammy. Tammy's gaze softened as she looked at him. Thanks, Chris. That means a lot. The afternoon passed in a gentle rhythm, broken only by laughter, conversation, and the occasional encouraging word from Nora. Tammy found herself opening up more than she had expected, about her fears, her hopes, the uncertainty of her relationships, and the desire to finally stand on her own. It felt safe to speak these truths here, in this kitchen, surrounded by the warmth of people who truly cared. By evening, Tammy wheeled herself to the porch, letting the cool breeze wash over her. The sky was painted in streaks of purple and orange, the world quiet except for the distant hum of traffic and the occasional bird song. She reflected on the events of the past weeks, the chaos, the fear, the victories, and the setbacks. Each moment had shaped her, challenged her, and ultimately strengthened her resolve. Her phone buzzed. It was Amy. Tammy answered quickly, smiling when she saw the video of little Gage running through the living room, his laughter infectious. He's unstoppable, Tammy remarked, watching the tiny whirlwind of energy on the screen. Amy laughed. He's like a little hurricane. Can't keep him still for a second. But that's what makes life fun, right? Absolutely, Tammy agreed. And you're handling it beautifully. I'm proud of you, sis. The phone call ended, and Tammy felt a quiet contentment settle over her. The challenges weren't gone, and life was far from perfect, but in this moment, she felt grounded, capable, and ready to face whatever came next. Look at this, 42 pounds down. Tammy's eyes widened. She had known the numbers, felt the changes in her body, but seeing it in black and white, official and undeniable, brought a rush of pride that made her heart swell.
I
can't believe it, she whispered, her voice catching. Believe it, Chris said firmly. You've earned every single pound, every struggle, every early morning and late night. You're a warrior, Tammy. Tammy's gaze softened as she looked at him. Thanks, Chris. That means a lot. The afternoon passed in a gentle rhythm, broken only by laughter, conversation, and the occasional encouraging word from Nora. Tammy found herself opening up more than she had expected, about her fears, her hopes, the uncertainty of her relationships, and the desire to finally stand on her own. It felt safe to speak these truths here, in this kitchen, surrounded by the warmth of people who truly cared. By evening, Tammy wheeled herself to the porch, letting the cool breeze wash over her. The sky was painted in streaks of purple and orange, the world quiet except for the distant hum of traffic and the occasional bird song. She reflected on the events of the past weeks, the chaos, the fear, the victories, and the setbacks. Each moment had shaped her, challenged her, and ultimately strengthened her resolve. Her phone buzzed. It was Amy. Tammy answered quickly, smiling when she saw the video of little Gage running through the living room, his laughter infectious. He's unstoppable, Tammy remarked, watching the tiny whirlwind of energy on the screen. Amy laughed. He's like a little hurricane. Can't keep him still for a second. But that's what makes life fun, right? Absolutely, Tammy agreed. And you're handling it beautifully. I'm proud of you, sis. The phone call ended, and Tammy felt a quiet contentment settle over her. The challenges weren't gone, and life was far from perfect, but in this moment, she felt grounded, capable, and ready to face whatever came next. Together with Amy, with her family, and with her own unwavering determination, she would continue to rise, to grow, and to find joy in the everyday miracles that life offered. The morning sun crept through the windows of Tammy's room, spilling golden light across the treatment facility. Tammy stretched, feeling the warmth on her skin, a tangible reminder that each day was a fresh start. Her thoughts drifted to the events of the past weeks, the confrontations, breakthroughs, and small triumphs that had slowly reshaped her life. For the first time in years, she felt the promise of true change, of life reclaimed from the chaos and heartbreak she had endured. Amy arrived quietly, carrying a cup of coffee and a warm smile. "Good morning, sis," she said softly, setting the cup on the bedside table. "How are you feeling today?" Tammy took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. "Stronger."
Calm. Ready, she replied.
"I've learned that life doesn't wait for anyone, and neither should I." The sisters shared a long, lingering hug, a silent affirmation of the bond that had weathered storms, betrayals, and personal struggles. They had fought, argued, cried, and supported each other, and through it all, their connection had endured. Though battered, it remained unbroken. Nora, Tammy's new nurse and steadfast companion, entered with a clipboard in hand. "Morning, Tammy. Ready for our session?" she asked, her southern drawl gentle but firm. Tammy nodded, rising from the bed and preparing for the day. Each movement felt purposeful, deliberate, and empowering. She no longer viewed her body as a limitation but as a vessel for resilience and strength. Meanwhile, Amy prepared to leave for a family gathering, Gage and Glenn tugging at her sleeves with endless energy. "Be careful today," Tammy said, her voice tinged with pride and affection. "And enjoy every moment. You deserve it." Amy hugged her sister once more. "We both do," she whispered, a shared understanding passing between them. Life had been harsh, unrelenting at times, but the sisters were learning to savor its rare, precious joys. In the therapy room, Tammy faced challenges that would have once seemed insurmountable. The exercises were physically demanding, the movements precise, and the effort exhausting. Yet, each repetition brought a sense of accomplishment, a quiet affirmation that she could reclaim control over her body and her life. Nora offered guidance, encouragement, and a lighthearted joke here and there, making the process not only bearable but even enjoyable. Tammy laughed, a rich, full sound that had once been stifled by insecurity and fear. Hours later, as the sun tilted toward the horizon, Tammy wheeled herself to the facility's patio. The breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers, a gentle reminder of nature's resilience. She gazed at the sky, reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. The tumult of relationships, the challenges of her weight loss, the surgeries, the emotional upheavals, they had all led to this moment of clarity. She was not defined by her past mistakes or setbacks, but by her courage to continue moving forward. Amy returned, bringing with her the energy of family life, the chaos of parenting, and the warmth of unconditional love. The sisters sat together, sharing a quiet meal and a comfortable silence. Words were unnecessary. Their presence alone was enough to convey support, understanding, and an unspoken vow to face the future together. As the evening deepened, they reflected on the path they had traveled. Amy thought of the lessons she had learned from betrayal, forgiveness, and perseverance. She realized that strength was not just measured in weight lost or obstacles overcome, but in the capacity to love, to trust, and to rebuild. Tammy felt similarly, acknowledging the power she had found within herself, the ability to set boundaries, to pursue independence, and to embrace a life shaped by her own choices. In the quiet moments before bedtime, the sisters looked toward the future with cautious optimism. They knew challenges awaited. Relationships would test them, health goals would demand commitment, and life's unpredictability would continue to surprise them. Yet, they also knew that their bond, resilience, and newfound self-awareness would carry them through. Tammy leaned back in her recliner, the sun setting in brilliant hues over Dixon, Kentucky. Amy sat nearby, the boys finally resting after a day full of joy and excitement. They shared a simple truth. Together, they could face the storms, celebrate the victories, and cherish the ordinary moments that made life extraordinary. As the night wrapped around them, a sense of peace settled over the Slayton family. Their journeys were ongoing, full of promise, struggle, and growth. But at this moment, they were whole, connected, resilient, and ready for whatever came next. Tammy and Amy, each in her own way, had discovered that power, love, and hope were not just concepts but lived experiences, accessible even in the midst of hardship. The camera lingered on the sisters, their faces glowing with quiet triumph, the boys nestled between them, and the soft, steady rhythm of life continuing around them. It was a tableau of recovery, of family, and of the unbreakable spirit that had carried them through the storms. The episode ended with the understanding that life's journey is ongoing, filled with setbacks, surprises, and moments of pure joy. Tammy and Amy's story was far from finished, but they had reached a pivotal moment, a place of self-discovery, empowerment, and unwavering sisterly love. Together, they had learned to rise, to reclaim joy, and to cherish each day as a gift. And as the screen faded to black, the message was clear. The Slayton sisters, resilient and hopeful, were ready to embrace the future, stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. In the quiet moments before bedtime, the sisters looked toward the future with cautious optimism. They knew challenges awaited. Relationships would test them, health goals would demand commitment, and life's unpredictability would continue to surprise them. Yet, they also knew that their bond, resilience, and newfound self-awareness would carry them through. Tammy leaned back in her recliner, the sun setting in brilliant hues over Dixon, Kentucky. Amy sat nearby, the boys finally resting after a day full of joy and excitement. They shared a simple truth. Together, they could face the storms, celebrate the victories, and cherish the ordinary moments that made life extraordinary. As the night wrapped around them, a sense of peace settled over the Slayton family. Their journeys were ongoing, full of promise, struggle, and growth. But at this moment, they were whole, connected, resilient, and ready for whatever came next. Tammy and Amy, each in her own way, had discovered that power, love, and hope were not just concepts but lived experiences, accessible even in the midst of hardship. The camera lingered on the sisters, their faces glowing with quiet triumph, the boys nestled between them, and the soft, steady rhythm of life continuing around them. It was a tableau of recovery, of family, and of the unbreakable spirit that had carried them through the storms. The episode ended with the understanding that life's journey is ongoing, filled with setbacks, surprises, and moments of pure joy. Tammy and Amy's story was far from finished, but they had reached a pivotal moment, a place of self-discovery, empowerment, and unwavering sisterly love. Together, they had learned to rise, to reclaim joy, and to cherish each day as a gift. And as the screen faded to black, the message was clear. The Slayton sisters, resilient and hopeful, were ready to embrace the future, stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. The next morning, Dixon woke to an unusual stillness. The birds chirped softly, and the faint smell of fresh dew lingered in the air. Amy sat at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee, her mind racing with plans for the upcoming week. She had decided to take Gage and Glenn to the park, a small adventure she hadn't done in months. The thought of fresh air, laughter, and sun on their faces brought her a strange sense of peace. Tammy, still in her wheelchair, had just returned from her morning therapy session. Her muscles ached pleasantly from the stretches and movements she had pushed herself to complete. Today felt different. The sun's rays fell across her room in a warm glow, reflecting off the polished hardwood floors. She exhaled slowly, feeling a rare combination of anticipation and calm. The past weeks had been chaotic, emotional, and transformative. Yet, for the first time in a long while, she felt she could breathe without the weight of others' expectations pressing down. Amy pushed herself from her chair, glancing over at Tammy. "Sis, Want to help me pack some snacks for the boys? I'm thinking sandwiches, fruit, maybe some of those little granola bars you like. Tammy's eyes lit up. The notion of contributing, of being part of something purposeful, was still thrilling. Sure, she said, her voice carrying a rare hint of excitement. Together, they organized the bag, folding sandwiches neatly, arranging the fruit, and checking the juice boxes. Each motion, small as it was, felt like a step toward reclaiming normalcy. Chris peeked in through the doorway, holding a small box of supplies he had found while running errands. Hey, you two. Got a couple of things for the park. Thought I'd lend a hand, he said, trying to appear casual but clearly thrilled to be involved. Amy gave him a bright smile. Thanks, Chris. You always show up at the right time. Tammy nodded in agreement, her hand reaching out to squeeze his. Yeah, it's nice to have someone who actually notices when things are heavy. By mid-morning, they were loaded into the car, Gage and Glenn strapped safely in their seats, the sun high enough to cast a comforting warmth. Amy drove slowly, savoring each moment, listening to the boys' chatter and laughter as the world passed by outside. Tammy, beside her, kept glancing out the window, marveling at the simple beauty of trees, the sky, and the occasional passerby. She reflected on how far they had come, from struggling to manage daily tasks to now orchestrating outings and adventures. It wasn't just the weight loss or the therapy, it was the reclamation of life itself. At the park, the siblings set up a small picnic area near the playground. Gage and Glenn raced toward the swings and slides, their energy boundless. Amy and Tammy unpacked the snacks and drinks, occasionally laughing as the boys squealed with delight. Remember when we couldn't even make it to the mailbox without feeling exhausted? Amy said, shaking her head. Tammy smiled quietly, acknowledging the contrast. Yeah. Feels like a lifetime ago, doesn't it? Hours passed quickly. The boys tired themselves out. The sun began its descent, and the air cooled. Amy sat back on the bench, watching them play, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and profound contentment. Tammy, beside her, adjusted her wheelchair to a more comfortable position. She felt an unfamiliar lightness in her chest, a sense that perhaps life's battles were finally within her reach. You know, she said softly, we might actually be okay. Amy turned, catching her gaze. We will be. We have to be, for them, for ourselves. As the sky turned shades of pink and gold, the sisters packed up, loaded the boys, and headed home. The ride was quiet at first, filled with small observations about the day. Then Tammy spoke, a thoughtful tone coloring her words. Amy, do you ever wonder what it'll be like a year from now? 2 years? Will things finally feel stable? Amy considered, her hand steady on the wheel. I think stability isn't about life being perfect. It's about having each other, having the courage to face whatever comes next. And we've got that. Tammy nodded, a smile tugging at her lips. It was small, but it was real. And for the first time in a long time, both sisters felt that perhaps the hardest chapters were behind them, and the unwritten ones held promise, laughter, and the quiet strength of resilience. As the car rolled into their driveway, the lights of their home welcoming them back, both sisters shared a glance that spoke volumes. Together, no challenge seemed insurmountable. Together, they had reclaimed their narrative, and it was theirs to shape from now on. The evening settled over Dixon like a soft blanket, tinged with the scent of autumn leaves and the faint aroma of dinner wafting from neighboring homes. Inside the Slayton house, the atmosphere was calm, but beneath the surface, a quiet anticipation lingered. Tammy had insisted on preparing her own meal tonight, eager to continue the momentum she had discovered in the kitchen with Nora. Amy moved about efficiently, setting the table and double-checking the boys' pajamas were clean and cozy for bedtime. Tammy wheeled herself to the counter, her hands steady despite the fatigue from earlier therapy. She focused on chopping the vegetables for a simple stir-fry, each slice precise, almost meditative. It's amazing how a little activity can change your mindset, Tammy said, glancing at Amy. I never imagined enjoying something as simple as cooking. Amy smiled warmly. Sometimes the smallest victories matter the most. It's not about perfection, it's about doing it yourself on your terms. Meanwhile, the boys played quietly with their building blocks, their laughter occasionally rising above the soft hum of the stove. Gage had discovered a fascination with creating towers that always toppled dramatically, while Glenn clapped gleefully at every crash. The scene was ordinary, yet for Amy and Tammy, it felt extraordinary. The simple joys of home, family, and togetherness carried a weight far beyond their years of struggle. Once the meal was ready, they sat down together. Tammy's plate was modest, her portions carefully measured, yet she felt a quiet pride in what she had accomplished. Amy watched her sister take her first bite, the familiar sparkle of satisfaction in her eyes. "This is really good, Tammy," Amy said, a note of genuine awe in her voice. "You did it all yourself." Tammy chuckled softly, a sound rare and unburdened. "Maybe I'm a natural." "Watch out, world. Tammy the chef is back in action." After dinner, the sisters gathered the boys for bedtime. Stories were told, songs were hummed, and the little ones drifted off into sleep with smiles still etched on their faces. Amy and Tammy lingered in the hallway, the quiet of the house settling around them like a comforting cloak. "It's incredible, isn't it?" Amy whispered. "How far we've come. From struggling to just exist to actually building moments like these." Tammy nodded slowly, her gaze distant, yet filled with determination.
"Yes."
"But we've still got so much ahead of us. Recovery, growth, learning to trust ourselves again, it's a journey." Later that night, after the boys had been tucked in and the house quieted, Tammy sat alone in her room. Her thoughts wandered back to Philip, to the suffocating patterns she had finally escaped. She replayed the conversation, the moment of clarity that had allowed her to reclaim her life. "It's not about anger," she murmured to herself. "It's about realizing your worth and refusing to settle for less." She felt a sense of liberation, one that extended far beyond physical recovery or weight loss. It was about reclaiming her identity, her autonomy, and her future. Amy, meanwhile, curled up on the couch with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She reflected on the morning, the park, and the joy of seeing her children thriving. The events with Josh and Michael still weighed on her heart, but the support from Tammy and Chris reminded her that she was not alone. She realized that life's unpredictability could be met with resilience, courage, and the love of those who truly cared. "We've survived so much," she whispered, "and we'll survive whatever comes next." The following day brought new challenges and opportunities. Tammy had a follow-up appointment with her dietitian and physical therapist, while Amy was determined to finalize plans for Glenn and Gage's school and extracurricular activities. Even in the midst of routine, both sisters found ways to insert moments of joy, laughter, and self-care. The process was slow, deliberate, and sometimes exhausting, yet it was real and tangible progress. That afternoon, as Tammy practiced walking short distances without relying fully on her wheelchair, Amy cheered her on from across the room. "You've got this, Tammy." Step by step, Tammy focused on her movements, each stride a testament to months of hard work, therapy, and inner determination. She felt a surge of pride and empowerment with every step. For her, these small victories were far more meaningful than any number on a scale. They were a testament to her resilience and unwavering spirit. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows through the windows, Amy and Tammy reconvened in the living room. They shared a quiet moment of reflection, recounting the highs and lows of the past months. The journey had been anything but smooth, yet the bond between them had grown stronger, fortified by shared struggles, unwavering support, and moments of triumph. "You know," Amy said softly, "no matter what happens, we'll always have each other. That's something no one can take away." Tammy nodded, her eyes glistening. "Always. And that's how we keep moving forward, together."